Okay. This is the February 20th, 2024 meeting of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We are starting the meeting at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to just go around and say who is here for the record. This is Becky Bunnell, Chair.
It's Don Lamberti, Vice Chair.
I'm Dick Mahusky, I'm the Secretary.
Charles Abercrombie, member of the board.
And Prue O'Brien is on the phone.
Prue O'Brien is our recording secretary. She's on the phone, but she's going to have to leave to go to a finance meeting. So Dick Mahusky will be taking the minutes of tonight's meeting. And we also have on the phone Haley Simpson from Race Coastal Engineering.
Okay. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let us move to agenda item number 1, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the minutes of the January 16th, 2024 regular meeting. Do I have any comments or edits that anyone would like to make on those minutes?
This is Dick Mahusky. I do have a couple of edits. And I apologize to Prue because she gave me a sneak peek at these minutes, and I said, gee, this is not quite right. And I gave her a correction, and I was wrong in the correction. So Prue, that was not you, that was me. So the first thing is on item number 2, page 1, 4 lines from the bottom. It reads, Penfield is 300 is approximately feet of beach and the surrounding. I would just change that to the pavilion extends along the beach approximately 300 feet, and the surrounding beach area is approximately. So just that little minor change there. And then on item number 4, the last bullet, it's Alex Monk, A-L-E-X for Alexandra. So just change the C to an X. And then the last edit would be on item number 6, page 3, second bullet down from the top on page 3. The number of Stratfield Road is 447, not 477. And I would strike and to where the town has property across the river on Woodside Circle. That is true, but it's not germane to the topic of the erosion that's happening at 447. So those would be the adjustments that I would propose to make.
You're welcome.
Any other edits or amendments?
Well, sounds good to me.
All right, did I make a motion that the minutes be approved as edited?
Okay, second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so moved. Let us move on to agenda item number 2, which is to discuss the status of the Penfield Resiliency Project with our intention of setting a resilience elevation that will inform both our master planning and the specific Penfield resilience study next steps for race.
And so I would just note that Peter Wiswell has now joined the meeting.
Peter, thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Peter.
Good to see everybody.
So, to start this next topic, Haley, since you're on the phone, if Race were to make a recommendation of what you would recommend to the town of Fairfield for a elevation height that we would do our resilience planning to, what would Race's recommendation be?
So we've been discussing it in the office, and at this point, we would probably recommend an elevation of 12. That would correspond to the Zone 3 total water level for the 25-year event with sea level rise. It's around 11.8, but probably to round up to 12 for a nice round number, for simplicity.
And that matches that you said the 25-year with sea level rise for all zones.
For Zone 3, which is the zone that Penfield is located in.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
I had one question.
item 3.
Item 3, it says maximum water depth relative to average crest elevation. What does that mean?
So that is intended, so along the zone 3 line, we took the average elevation just along the topographic survey information that we have, and that is relating the total water level to that average crest elevation. So in that zone, it's 11 feet. So with the total water level, the maximum total water level pulled from that zone, there's a water depth of around 0.8 feet based on the average grade elevation.
But that's an average. So what that really means for the Penfield site, for example, which is in zone 3, but it's captured within the average for that 11. What that really means for Penfield is that Penfield has to go down to an elevation 8, at least under the building. So if you were to agree on a 12-foot elevation, resilience elevation, you would need to basically make a dune or some sort of resilience measure of 4 feet in elevation above the 8 feet that Penfield will have to go down to. Correct?
Right, that's correct.
And it could be that other parts of that average are actually already higher than the 12 feet because that section involves significantly higher dunes on either side of Penfield.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that average elevation was really just to look at the zones at a kind of more holistic view. But when you go to look and see how you'd have to treat specific sites, you'd have to go and get the specific grade at those sites. So yeah, if we had a design elevation of 12 feet at the Penfield site with the proposed grades, we'd have to go up about 4 feet to meet that.
Right. Are there other questions that anyone in the room has about the tables themselves and how to interpret the tables and what this means?
Yeah, I think I may have sent Haley an email with this question. If in my innocence, I would think that the numbers that are arrived at for the design 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, the total water elevations that are arrived at for those numbers, to get the influence of sea level rise, I would expect to just add 20 inches, but it doesn't seem that it's a constant number that's added.
Right. So with the 20 inches, so that's applied out in the deep water. So when we apply that 20 inches, really that's applied to just the water level as a whole. As it progresses inland and into shore, that's where you see that wave set up, and it really becomes the hydrodynamics of that area really plays a role in that. So at that point, it can vary and it could be kind of moved into other locations, and it doesn't have to be exactly the 20 inches of sea level rise.
Okay.
In the end.
So, I mean, my thought was that waves act differently with a change in water depth.
Correct. Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, how did you arrive at 20 inches? But to me, it's an unrealistic number. Is it possible to assume a 10-inch sea level rise?
Don, we're not going to debate that here.
Okay.
Yeah. Don, the way to think about that is, Don, the way I would ask you to think about that is there's 2 charts on each of these sections. So the no sea level rise assumes that you know,
fine. Yeah.
It's basically as we are today. The sea level rise chart is right now what Circa obviously is projecting as its best projection, but probably highest projection. So probably, Don, to your point, the actual sea level rise is somewhere going to be in between those 2 charts. But we don't know that. So the question then becomes, what do we plan to? If Circa is right, and it's all the way to the 20 inches, then should we plan to that just to be on the safe side? If Circa is wrong, then, you know, they're going to be reevaluating every, I think it's gone to 5 years. It was 10 years.
Yeah, it is. Jim O'Donnell, from my conversation with John Trzynski from Circa, Jim O'Donnell is working on the next iteration of their recommendation on expected sea level rise. He's working on that now, which will bring it like a 5-year update.
Yeah, so this could very easily go down, but at this point, what we have are these two data points. We have today, and we have current best projection. Max sea level height by 2050.
Okay. May I ask one question? This is Peter. The point noted relative to the 20 inches, as I understand it, perhaps lessening as you get further inland. I don't understand that. Could that be explained once more?
So the 20 inches is applied to the whole domain itself. But as the waves and you have all the impacts and the hydrodynamics that occur along the shore, that water it'll move, it'll spread out, it'll just flow to open areas. So it's not going to be an exact 20 inches once you start looking at specific areas after the water is able to move. This model it's a wave model, but it's also coupled with a flow model. So the water is able to move in different directions into different low points and things like that. So the difference isn't going to be perfectly 20 inches everywhere because it has that flow component to it. If we were looking at, say, just the wave model itself, it would be a different output. But because we coupled it, there's a lot of dynamics happening in this model. And we input it with 20 inches, but it has the ability to calculate kind of where that water moves to. And as you go closer into shore and around those areas that topographically change, you're going to see different water levels there.
Okay. So I think the key word is wave. Once the wave is dissipated, there are other factors that come into play. And with that said, when you are at the beachfront, i.e. the pavilion, is that where the 20 becomes more precise?
That's where, so the 20 is precise. Where we force the model, that's where the 20 is precise. As it moves towards the shoreline, that's where the model is able to calculate precise water level elevations, but just because you added a 20 inches of sea level at the boundary condition in the open water doesn't mean you're going to see exactly 20 inches along the shoreline. So it does precisely calculate the total water elevation along the shoreline. It just may not be exactly 20 inches because of that movement of water. So
any point from shoreline inward, the 20 inches might require some modification, including where the pavilion is.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
What are you calling shoreline? The still water high tide?
High water mark. And I think she explained it well. Once the wave action is dissipated, you have other factors that come into play. And theoretically, it could be more than 20 inches, but in all likelihood, it's going to be less.
Right, depending on what the waves do at any point in time. Just one last thing. I would go ahead.
No, I had another question as related to what Peter was saying. So if you were to look at, for example, your zone 5, which a lot of that water comes in up through Ash Creek, which gives the waves potentially time to dissipate because they have to go over. You're going to have a lower, potentially less of a wave, both less wave height and potentially a dissipation, a little bit of those 20 inches because it can spread out more. Is that a correct assumption, or am I misstating that?
Mm-hmm.
No, you're going to see a dissipation of the wave energy up there because it will have to filter in through South Benson Marina and through Ash Creek. Yeah. And I would say, though, on the contrary as well, you will have that wave dissipation in that area, but because you are that area is enclosed, the wind that you have that's pushing into that area will also cause a buildup of water. So there's a little bit of both happening here, but that's not in regards to the 20 inches. But yeah, you will have a dissipation of waves up in that area.
Okay.
Is it safe to say that the weather event is going to drive the numbers, specifically the dissipation factor, the possibility that could be even higher inshore, less likely, but possible? It's the weather event. And you can't be clairvoyant on that point. So the 20 is somewhat of a blended average.
Right. So if you look at both of the tables, if you all end up going with a, say, 12 inches, or I'm sorry, 12 feet as a design kind of elevation, that could be the 25-year event with sea level rise included. But if, say, that 20 inches doesn't occur by 2050, then at that point, you're planning for, say, a larger storm event without sea level rise. So it's always good to include sea level rise if, say, it does occur in the future, but say it doesn't occur that much, then you're still adding a increased amount of resilience than if you weren't to look at it at all.
But to be fair, resilience, extra feet of resilience costs money. So I think we need to be judicious with what height we would design to, because obviously 11-foot number would be less expensive for the town to implement than a 12-foot number.
Yep, you're right.
So I think what I'm sort of in my mind thinking through is what exactly would we want? We let me step back. We are sitting here today and have not had a 10-year no sea level storm event since Sandy. So basically, we haven't even had the minimum on this chart since for the last 12 years. So a 10-year storm is really a worst case scenario 10-year storm. It's everything, the worst possible storm of every single component. It's the worst wind conditions, the worst tide conditions, the worst everything conditions, and we haven't had that sort of perfect storm at the 10-year level in 12 years. So I sort of question whether we want to design to a 25-year storm or whether we want to design to a 10-year storm with sea level rise. And I lean more towards sort of the 10-year storm with sea level rise as our design criteria, because what I think we owe the guidance we got from Jim O'Donnell was it would be, as towns look at resilience planning, they shouldn't do nothing, but we're not going to protect our coastline against a Cat 3 hurricane. We're just not. There's going to be water overtopping. It's the same thing with a Cat 2 hurricane. So we just need to think through what is it we're really trying to protect here. And to me, it's the sort of more intense storms, but we have to just recognize we're not going to protect against a category, certainly 2 and 3 hurricane. So, we'd want to protect against nor'easters. We'd want to protect against sunny day flooding. We'd want to protect against sea level rise. But where is that happy middle ground? And to me, it's somewhere in that 10-year sea level rise space, maybe 10 to 15 year. So somewhere between that 10 and 25 with sea level rise is sort of where my head is. So I'd probably lean more towards an 11-foot elevation.
Becky, you raise a great point. Has the town been asked what they want?
Well, that's what we're deciding.
I think we are they. We're the ones who are going to make the recommendation, in my mind.
Well put. That's kind of my point. We look at the news today and we see the third atmospheric, whatever the hell it is, coming in across river coming across California. 3 of them in 1 year is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it's happening.
10 years, 25 year, 100 year. I guess my point is, isn't that kind of like meaningless now with what's going on, where who knows what weather we're going to get?
Yeah.
Do we have a consensus from the town, but as Dick said, maybe we are the town, as to what people want? And is it even possible to get that consensus? If we have that Cat 2 storm, which has certainly not been seen in my lifetime, the damage is going to be horrific. Are there people, if nothing else, but the residents who want us to be preparing for that?
And I think, Peter, we're starting that process now, which is what does the town want, and that process will have multiple steps as we work through it, including public engagement. I think what we're starting with is a data point, which is what we've asked Race to provide us. A data set allows us to get some flood and erosion. Then we'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on what we believe. We would then probably take that out to the RTM and to public engagement to get feedback. And throughout this process, this multi-step process, we will align on what the town, quote unquote, feels is the right level of protection that we should be planning to. Mm-hmm. So we're just at step now.
I think with my closing comment would be, having had this conversation, I suggest that we make that recommendation. We see to it that we say, on the assumption that this is what the town is looking for, this is what we recommend, but mindful of current day climate, there are other options that could be actioned on that would provide greater. I don't mean to sound like a complete coward, but
I think it would be,
if that Cat 2 comes, our recommendations will probably be deficient.
Yes, and I think that needs to be a clear part of our guidance that we provide, which is that we are providing whatever number we pick. If we pick the 12, for example, what we are basically saying is that for all intents and purposes, we should not see any significant water in our floodplain at that 25-year with sea level rise storm. Anything over 5-year with sea level rise storm, we should expect to see breach points and water coming into our floodplain. And I think that has to be understood. And we have to, when we bring this out to the public, for example, we need to be able to show that, here's the kinds of things that it would protect against, and here is where it wouldn't. And that has X cost. Now the problem is we don't have any cost. What we have is an Army Corps cost, which is probably a 75-year storm with sea level rise that costs $546 million. So we have one point. We have a do-nothing scenario, which is basically a, keep it where it is, do nothing, have no resilience whatsoever, and allow the sea level to come up, and we will start to see sunny day flooding on a regular basis. Once the sea level comes up, we're going to start to see regular flooding, probably breach points over into our floodplain. And I think that all we can do is give them some context. The problem is that we can't give any firm numbers or any guarantees. We can give guidance. Well,
the firm number is, if you want to look at the realities of climate change right now, well, maybe we should recommend a $500 million plus package that ain't going to happen.
No, I mean, I think we've already decided that happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry
So
to belabor it.
Yeah. And the reality, all we're recommending now are two very specific things, two very specific action items. Whatever number we pick will be what RACE will design the Penfield resilience measures against. They're going to go back and do the last part of their study, which is now to look at, if we give them 12 or 11, whatever we give them, they're going to look at what types of resilience mitigation measures can they put in that site to keep water out to whatever elevation we pick. And that will complete that project for them. So that's one outcome. The second outcome is we're going to say this is the elevation height that we are proposing we give to the town master resilience plan that will be bidding out in 2024.
Okay.
What are other people's suggestions?
All right, this is Dick. I would like to make two observations. One is that if we look at the 25 years design storm with sea level rise, that 25 years is a 4% chance of happening any and every year. So any and every year at that level, we would be protecting 96% of the time. Only 4% of the time would we be exposed. And this is obviously all theoretical. The other observation I'd like to make is that way back when, Flood and Erosion Control Board, and I think this was within a year or a year and a half of the 2015 master plan that was put together, we were talking about, well, the protection level that we should shoot to provide is 12 feet. And that was based on nothing, based on seat of the pants, based on the 10.5 foot total water level we experienced during Sandy, but it just felt like the right number. And whether it's 11 or 12 kind of depends on whether it winds up after our recommendation, whether the real world winds up at 11 or 12, which seem like righteous numbers. It's going to be influenced by what the regulating bodies, i.e. DEEP, has to say about the measures that we contrive, and it's going to have to do with how much money, how much tax money are we going to have to spend on this? Will we be able to get grants, or will we have to fund it all ourselves? So those will come into play as specific measures are identified and fleshed out, I think. I personally, I would vote on 12 feet, not 11 feet, because my belief is that having something at 11 feet, the incremental cost to go to 12 feet is not that significant. So why not go to 12 feet, and we can say that we're good with the today designed sea level rise. And if sea level rise does not rise as much, we have additional safety factor, or as I think it was maybe Haley put it, that we will have protection for 30-year storm, 35-year storm. So that's my 2 cents. I would vote for 12 feet.
So Dick,
Chuck,
can I throw an alternate scenario out, which is that we plan for 12 now, with the idea that we design an option into each of our resilience segments to add an extra foot at a later date, so that we can, basically keep the costs down from a taxpayer standpoint, but plan as if we can add a foot at a later date when we can have a better feel and guidance on actually how much sea level rise there is going to be. And keep costs down in the short term, but put the groundwork in place to be able to easily raise it an additional foot.
And are you saying design for 11 with the built-in capacity to go to 12, or design to 12 with the built-in capacity?
I'm saying design for 11 with a capacity in the design itself to go to 12. So it may mean that we slightly larger foundation in order to support that extra foot down the road, but we don't put that in now.
Okay, that's consistent with what we've said. That's consistent with how we asked them to design the Riverside Drive tide gate assembly so that we could scab on. And at that time, we said 2 feet is a round number because just looking at Circa's projection for 20-inch rise. I would have no trouble with that. Chuck, you had something that you wanted to...
I just wanted to ask a question by way of clarification. When the conversation opened, Becky asked the question about what would Race's recommendation be with respect to elevation. The answer was 12. My question is, does that 12 apply only to Zone 3?
For purposes of Race's next step action, yes, because they're looking at resiliency at the Penfield site.
Right, that's what I thought, but I wanted.
But if you look at the tables of the 5 zones that they've identified, the Zone 3 Penfield site, that's the highest total water level of all of them.
Thank you.
Dick, I would support Becky's suggestion with the caveat that it be made very clear that one of the drivers for going to 11 and not 12 is money, not necessarily science. Science is a bit nebulous, but with the way things have been going, it may ultimately be shown maybe 12 is the right one. But there's also an argument to be made for the 11, and money is a pretty significant driver. I don't want to be sitting at this table in a few years when after that Cat 2 storm hits, and all of a sudden we've got 25 or 50 people that want to attend the meeting to talk about what horrible people we are for having said 11 and not 12 when the science was so clear. Oh, that's called 20/20 hindsight.
Well, you'll always have that.
But why not prepare for it by, if we're going to support Becky's 11 with the ability to roll it up to 12, we put in a disclaimer noting that a driver is money. $500 million is a lot of money.
Well, it's not. It's not. I mean, that the Army Corps numbers are unrealistic numbers.
Agreed.
The town has already decided. Now, the town could always go back and relook at anything they want. But at that time, the town decided it was unrealistic.
But it is a hard benchmark as far as it goes. And yes. Why not, if we're going to try to reach an accommodation, simply cover our backsides? I don't mean to sound too defensive, but I like what Becky's saying. Let's just make sure we couch it in terms of, hey, Board of Selectmen, if you don't like this, then do something about it. You've got the authority.
Well, I think what I'm hearing, and we should get together with Bill Hurley and maybe Emmeline, the brain trust that we had at our last meeting regarding the resiliency at Penfield, and just run this by them with the idea that Race is going to complete that task using a number of 11 feet, and then just with an asterisk say this is what would be affected were we to go to 12 feet.
Yeah.
And then that'll give us a benchmark at the Penfield site.
But we're not
And
talking
then,
about a
and
lot
then
of
the next,
language.
and then the next step would be, we need to go before Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, maybe RTM, to get approval to spend money for our updated master plan. So when we go before those bodies with the updated master plan, we will include in our master plan either 11 feet with the provision to go to 12 feet or some words to that effect. So that to me is how we will get that information out into the public domain via the Board of Selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
Becky, does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I do think next steps are to run whatever our recommendation is by Bill, Emmeline, and Jim, for example, to get alignment,
Right.
and then formal recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And then in that meeting of the Board of Selectmen, we can talk about to what degree we engage. Would we have a public meeting? You know, what would their guidance be on that?
No, I think you need a public meeting. You can't rely on the Board of Selectmen to disseminate information to the whole town.
Yeah, no, I think it would be helpful to have public meetings. The question in my mind is, when do you have the public meeting? Do you as we said, there's two action items that are going to come out of this decision. One is the Penfield resilience mitigation options, which RACE will be looking at a range of options and coming back with a recommended option and some backup options. That absolutely, I believe, should go. We should have a public meeting to share those options because those have to have some level of cost to it, and so we can get some guidance from the public. The second action item is a little more downstream, if you will, because all that's going to do is guide the planning for a master town resilience study. And so there's two phases to that. We need to absolutely go out to the public and get their feedback in that, but we probably don't need to do it until the second phase, because that's going to be when we look at design options for each of these different segments that you see in this analysis here. Because I think you can't.
The first. I'm sorry.
If we don't have anything to show them, it's hard enough for us to make decisions like this. Just conceptually understanding what this means, it's much harder to try to ask public to give comments on something when there's nothing to show them other than some amorphous number.
Yeah, the intent of the way Becky has structured the resiliency plan update is that in phase one would be for the consultant and us to gather some data and explain what happens on the coastline and inland during these rain bombs, and then having that preliminary picture in hand. Then we go out to the public with public meetings and get their input. Say, this is where we are so far. This is what happens in Fairfield. These are 3, 4, 5 of the kinds of things we could do. They cost $2 million, $12 million, $50 million. What do you folks think?
Another point to make as we make our recommendation forward to the Board of Selectmen is I think it's important that if we're going to say this 11 with the designed in ability to go up down the road to 12, we also have to be very clear that at neither 11 or 12 are we likely to get grant money, and that this is going to be funded through town funds. We could certainly try to get some grants, but for the most part, FEMA will not give grants unless you meet a higher threshold.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so
do we have are there other people who have alternate suggestions that we should be discussing? Are there other discussion points here before we make a motion to at least have a flood and erosion controlled aligned view?
Well, shouldn't there be a discussion with Hurley and the others before we make a final decision?
Well, I think this is, yes, but I think what I'm trying to get out of today's meeting is what we take to Hurley, to Bill, and to Emmeline and Jim. What is our recommendation? And then that could change based upon any guidance and perspective they give us. But at this point, I'm just trying to end today's meeting with a firm stake in the ground of what we want to take forward to our next step. And our next step is the meeting with Bill, Emmeline, and Jim.
So this is Dick, I make a motion that we proceed with a target design elevation for resiliency of 11 feet with the provision that any structural designs involved be such that they can be extended an additional foot at some later date. And that is to sit down with our in-house brain trust, and from that meeting, we will give clear direction to RACE what level to proceed to.
Well, and Board of Selectmen, I think, has to do before RACE.
I don't know.
Becky, once again, I think Dick's wording is perfect, with the understanding that there be a full disclosure to all concerned, Board of Selectmen, RTM, public meeting, whatever is felt appropriate, noting that our considered opinion, inclusive of factoring in the cost, that we put in at 11 feet with a design capability such we can take it to 12 feet. But if we want to really be prudent, maybe we should go right to 12 feet, and there might even be some people who say go to 13 feet. I don't know that it would go that high, but once again, let's not be the whipping boys a few years from now when the big event happens and have people say you never told us.
But that's Peter. That's not the same as.
I'm sorry.
That's not the same as designing. I mean, warning and designing are two different things. You know?
Well, if the consensus is that the design needs to be at 12 feet, then fine.
Well, if that's the consensus.
Then the Board of Selectmen can say 12 feet. Our considered opinion, factoring in what we've heard from race, what we understand from climate, what we understand from local factors, economics, is the town is best served by 11 feet with the ability to go to 12 feet.
I agree.
But if money's no object, you might want to give thought to it being 12 feet. We don't know where the hell you're going to come up with the money, but something better than nothing, do 11, and that's why we're making this recommendation.
Right.
Well, this is Dick. We have to get RACE going on this, or we'll be here 6 months from now wondering what we're going to propose at Penfield. When we have our meeting with Bill and Emmeline and Jim went, at the last meeting, we also had Mr. Gerber was in attendance, and his special advisor, the name escapes me now, but he was there. So if his guidance is going to be, well, that's all well and good, but you have to present this to the Board of Selectmen before you continue managing the project with your vendor RACE. And he's saying this like to Bill Hurley. Bill, your vendor RACE is designing this. We've approved the money. They've given us a proposal to do this work for the money. So let them go ahead with 11 feet with a 12-foot asterisk on it, and then we'll go from there. But at least we'll get the wheels going at Penfield, because we still have to go with the permits. And I mean, that's a time-consuming thing there, I think. So,
Dick, you make a lot of
let's
sense.
not complicate our lives until directed to do so.
No, I completely agree, but nobody's going to direct us to go to 12 feet. They're going to say, you've done the research, then we'll go to 11 with the design capability going to 12. You guys are the experts, meaning Flood and Erosion Control Board. I agree, we go forward with race, but with the understanding throughout that this is our considered opinion subject to blah, 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 blah. So I agree, we go forward as you suggest. We just make sure everybody understands along the way there's this word called reality. That's all we're talking about, reality. I completely agree with your approach and Becky's, but let's make sure that reality is there.
Well, we're balancing resiliency and cost, and that's the guidance we're giving. So Dick had made a motion. Dick, do you want to repeat it again? And then if everyone is aligned, can we have a second?
Oh, geez, I have to go to the recording to repeat it again.
Well, all right.
So I make a motion that Becky and myself have another meeting with the town officials that were at the last meeting regarding resiliency at the Penfield site. And we will recommend in that meeting that we give RACE the charge to proceed at a protection elevation of 11 feet with an asterisk that any hard designs be able to be extended another foot to 12 feet, and then do the cost estimates based on the basic 11 feet with an adder to go to 12 feet. And if the recommendation is build the sand up to 11 feet or build the sand up to 12 feet so we allow a foot of scour away during the storm, then the added cost to go to 12 feet, i.e. 13 feet in sand maybe, that'll be another, whatever it is, $200,000.
Sounds very reasonable. Okay, I second the motion. Don Lamberti.
So I have a comment on that. I don't want to limit it to hard structures. I think what we're asking for is design elevation for resiliency at 11 with the design capability to go to 12 no matter what a dissolution is. I don't want to limit it to hard structures. I think, Dick, to your point.
No, that's not my intention at all. That's like, I went on and on about if it's sand, then it's an additional foot of sand. And if it's a wall, it's an additional foot of wall.
Okay, yeah. So your language originally used the word hard in it, so I just if we take that out, I support the motion as well. So all in favor all in favor for a design elevation for resiliency of 11 feet with the design capability to go to 12 feet, with the next steps being to go get alignment among the core team, if you will, here, Bill, Emmeline, and Jim, and to get alignment with the Board of Selectmen and proceed with the Penfield Resiliency Study, as well as that same elevation criteria be used for the town-wide resilience plan.
Yes.
So so I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor? Say aye.
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 So moved. Good. Well, thank you, Haley. You're welcome to stay on if you want.
Haley, don't tell Devin yet. He's got to hear it from Mr. Hurley.
Well, he is actually out of the country until Friday, so who knows if he's going to hear from me or from Bill first.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you all for letting me be a part of this call. And yeah, I wrote down some notes here, but we'll definitely wait until you discuss with kind of that core group before we move forward. But
right.
Looking forward to hear how your discussions turn out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
All right. Yeah, of course. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, we are now going to move to the next agenda item, which is to consider and act upon a request for the Board of Selectmen to make a resolution to modify our board's powers and duties and to recommend to the RTM that an ordinance be done to effect such. I think Chuck kindly prepared some documents which Dick sent out ahead of time. Do I have any comments on those documents?
This is Dick. I'm good with them.
Anyone else?
It's like, I know we've done it before, but it says provisions of chapter 477, subcheck, or section, whatever section. I'm not even sure what that is anymore. Do we have that, or
No, I remember.
I'm not sure what we're asking to do. I'm not opposed to it.
You used to know that.
I'm like,
Okay,
Those sections
yeah,
are part of a larger
Right, yeah.
climate bill.
right.
And those sections are specifically reference to.
I just don't know, I just don't remember what, oh,
And it's, you can see there's a lot of language about building, managing,
yeah,
basically handling
yeah,
the flood prevention,
right.
erosion control, and
Yeah.
climate resilience efforts of the town.
Does it give us authority to spend money, or?
No.
No,
No.
that's why it says within the appropriations of the municipality, because that's what the statute says. If you look at the.
I'm not sure what that means, but,
So we would
okay.
still, we would still
That
have.
means that we can decide that we're going to do an update to the master plan. But until Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance,
Yeah.
and RTM say, yes, you may have the $300,000 to do that, we cannot.
right. Because I remember there was something about taxing authority and everything else, if I remember.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff in
There's
there.
a lot of stuff in there.
I just don't remember it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
creating special tax districts.
Right.
Special, there's.
That's why I emailed that around a while ago.
And we would still have to go through the appropriate channels to access the funds. We still have to go through the appropriate boards. It just gives us the ability to make those recommendations and to be part of that process where we both can make capital recommendations as well as operating recommendations for funding.
And that's why within that clause about within the limits of appropriations from time to time made by the municipality, that's sort of a way of holding purse strings.
Keep us in check. Okay.
Now, the other thing associated with this, I would propose that the chairwoman write a transmittal letter to the Board of Selectmen to go along with the motions and the suggested ordinance language. And I would also suggest that the full text of the statutes be included as an attachment to this, so that anybody who wants to drill down into the detail of what those powers and authorities or powers and duties are will have the ready ability to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I second that. Is that a motion? Was that a motion?
Oh, I would, okay, this is Dick. I will make a motion that the three submitted documents be transmitted to the Board of Selectmen with a cover letter by our chairperson, and included with that transmission is the full text of the appropriate statutes, so that they may drill down and see what we're asking for.
Okay. Do I have a second, or is there some discussion? And is there
Second by Chuck.
Or you could at very least have it as an appendix, but same thing.
Yeah, as an appendix, correct. Yes. Any other discussions?
No.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Can all in favor say aye?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Let's move on to the number 4, status of active projects. We did get an update from Bill Hurley via email. Let me put that up. looking through my.
Becky, do you want, because I have a copy of Bill's comments. They were not, my email did not have blue highlights, so I was unclear. I spoke to Bill briefly earlier or late today, early this evening, and I think I understand what his current comments are. I don't think anything has changed that dramatically.
Well, I think the only thing that the board may not be aware of that I just want to underline is that there was in the January 31st meeting of the Board of Selectmen and in subsequent Board of Finance meetings after that, there was a redistribution of ARPA funds, and in those meetings, some significant resilience projects were impacted. So I do want to just go through it quickly so everyone is on the same page. So the ARPA's Perry's Green project, we transferred 600,000 additional ARPA funds into that project to pay for the overages in order to complete that project. The ARPA Rooster River, there had been a proposal on the table to turn that money back because there was a concern that because we weren't getting the Army Corps of Engineer permits in time, we would not be able to spend the money by the ARPA deadline. The alignment in the Board of Selectmen meeting was to wait a couple months because to see if the Army Corps permits come through, which would allow us to complete that project. And what Bill basically said is that we did get an initial comment from Army Corps for the Fairfield Wheeler site, and next month we'd have a better idea on the schedule. So there is a chance that we can spend some or possibly all of the Rooster River ARPA funds and still make those deadlines. We did lose the $400,000 of ARPA funds that was the high intensity wave study that was redistributed, and some of that went to the Perry's Green project. We also lost the $1.2 million of the downtown resilience project. That some of that went to the Perry's Green, and the rest of that money went to other town needs, most likely paving. The reason for the downtown resilience not being able to go through was that they have done additional work trying to understand what really is needed to make the downtown more resilient, and it is the amount is much higher than had been previously anticipated because of the resilience measures that are being proposed. So those are being explored and finalized, and then we're going to have to go back and see if that is something we want to recommend and where to find that money.
And the other thing that influences that is this: you have to have the money committed by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2025. Or 26, spent by the end of 2026. And that was a little problematical with downtown flooding. The downtown flooding topic has since reappeared on the capital plan that the Finance Board is considering tonight.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification. I also asked Bill for clarification on some of the money that has at this point been put into the budget but is currently on hold because I wanted some clarification. So we had put $100,000 into the budget for resiliency in front of the Fairfield Beach Club. That was an active project that is on hold while we figure out what to do for Penfield because it might have follow-on implications. Bill confirmed that it's still in the budget but subject to change is what he said on that. See, the Tidegate project are listed in the 5-year capital plan. Several of them are listed, not all of them, but the plan was to do this master Tidegate study. It's not 100% completed at this point. They're still working through a couple issues. Some of the sites have some contaminants in it, so that we have to work through that. But there are several of the Tidegate projects actively listed on the 5-year capital plan. The railroad underpass study that was done by Circa, we had a almost final presentation where they outlined several different resilience measures that we could take for the 4 railroad underpasses. Bill says that he's still waiting for the final document from Circa on that. Engineered beaches, we wanted to confirm, as you recall, we have 5 town beaches. We wanted to confirm that we are managing at least 4 of them correctly, where we're doing regular maintenance to make sure that it fits the specified profile, and we're doing regular surveys to measure that profile. And the 4 that were approved by DEEP are all of them, with the exception of Penfield. And we just wanted to confirm that those 4 are being actively maintained. He said surveyor has been out with an injury, still on the list to perform. So that's something we have to follow up to make sure, because the Engineered Beaches project depends on a correct profile being maintained by the town. Southport Harbor, we had talked about possibly seeing if the Army Corps is going to be doing some dredging in 2024. It's looking like that's getting pushed back to 2025. We had asked and explored the idea that we could possibly take some of that sand for either Engineered Beaches or other resilience projects. We got a preliminary guidance from the Harbor Commission and people working on the project that Army Corps already has a plan to put it on oyster beds, but it is something we might want to circle back with them now that there is a delay. The other race project studies, which is the Marina to Apple Creek open space, we did have some money in the budget. Right now, again, those were all put on hold while we work through both this elevation project we're doing now as well as the Penfield Resilience Project. So those monies have not been turned back, but it is subject to change, according to Bill, due to low benefit cost analysis. And flooding along Fairfield Beach Road. He says right now the workload is too much for the town surveyors to be able to do the appropriate surveys, so we would try to tie this into the master plan. And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'll add a couple of things. The Perry's Green, that contract has been, quote, awarded, unquote, to Terry Contracting, who is out of Riverhead, Long Island. I said, quote, unquote, because the final contract form has to be agreed to between the parties, looked at by our town attorney, et cetera. So they were the lowest bidder at $1,311,000. So they're going to be doing that work. The other thing is I misspoke. I said that the ARPA changes and capital information was before Board of Finance tonight. That was at their last meeting. So if you go and look at their February 6th meeting minutes, you will see in the attachments, you can see the big, long capital plan. And that's interesting to go through because you'll see a lot of projects that we have interest in are there, and how the money times out in the out years, how they put the money in the out years. The other thing that I just realized, when they say fiscal year 25, that's the fiscal year that starts on July 1st, 2024. So that's the year coming up. Fiscal year 2025 is what we're putting the budgets together for now. And I always thought it was different anyway. So the ARPA project with their changes are there on the February 6th Board of Finance meeting, and on the backup for tonight's meeting, there is a specific request to bond $3,717,000. They have the specific items on there, and one is the Pine Creek McCleary tide gate repair. The other is the Riverside Creek tide gate repair, and the other is increased resiliency open space Jennings Beach design. So that's going forward. That's $250,000 they're looking to bond for the design across the open space. So that's assuming agreement by the Board of Finance, and I guess it goes to RTM also. That will start sooner rather than later. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Any comments from anyone on the board?
No.
Any questions?
Not here.
All right, then, hearing none, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is to discuss the 2024 Master Plan Mitigation and Resilience Plan. This was right now where this stands is a draft RFP that I wanted to see if anyone had any comments on. The Flood and Erosion Control Board was copied on this, and our next steps are to get alignment from sort of the core internal resilience team, which would be Bill Hurley and Emmeline and Jim Wendt, and then
Becky,
taking that Board of Select.
Becky, did Hurley got the first draft? Did he ever give comments?
So first draft was actually shared in a meeting with Bill Hurley, Emmeline, Jim Wendt, Bill Gerber, and David Becker, as well as Adam, who is our
the purchasing agent.
Purchasing.
And director of purchasing.
There was a lot of some back and forth discussion in that meeting, and what I tried to do is capture the sense of that meeting in draft 2. So.
Right, and this is Dick. I was in that meeting, and I agree that Becky's rewrite does all that it should do, and our next step is to sit down again with that same cast of characters and go through it again. So I have no.
The next steps on that would be, assuming that people are aligned to that, is we would put that into the purchasing template, which involves things like bonding and what all the different parts of an RFP that purchasing would put onto it, and then that goes out for bid.
No, well, first we have to get the money allocated.
Right, but Bill Gerber has said that this is a priority, so I believe.
I agree. I understand, and I hope that we both really heard what we both think we heard. But it's step 1, step 2, step 3, and I mean it's my understanding that the town does not want to put a bid request out on the street unless the money is really allocated in there.
Okay. So that means it's a 2-month process, then to go through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM. And what'll probably happen is that we'll transfer some of these. Probably the reason that these monies have stayed in the budget, the $250 for Ash Creek resiliency, or for the Ash Creek projects, and the $100 for the Fairfield Beach Club, is those are easy places to pull the money. The other option, which I think we had originally recommended, was that we pull it from the ARPA funds from High Intensity Wave Study, which would have also funded the project. So there are several right. Easy funding options on the table. I don't anticipate it being a problem. But you're right, we still have to go through the process.
Yeah, it's still a step. It's still a step. So good.
Becky, I have no comment other than to make an observation about what I think might be a typo in the draft.
Oh, thank you for pointing out typos. Always
on page 2 at 3.0, part A, under scope of work. Should it be for the year 2050 and for the year 2100, not 2011?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
That's my contribution.
Thank you. Were there any other comments for anyone else on the board? All right.
No, I have no. I think this is great to go forward with.
Yeah.
All right. So hearing none, my next step is to set up a meeting said group and get this project going. So let's move on to the last agenda item, which is there any other business that anyone on the board wants to bring up?
That. Just stand by. Stand by. This is Dick. I'm good. I have nothing further.
Anyone else have anything?
Anybody?
No, sounds good.
Okay, then this is Dick. I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting until our next regular meeting in March, third Tuesday in March.
Okay, I second the motion.
All right, so adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay. Enjoy the snow.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the fireplace.
Yeah.